Next up is my buddy, patron saint of the way, Michael Salamone, founder of Podcast Revolution, Blog Revolution. If it's a revolution, Michael Salamone is behind it. Media Revolution. Hi, brother. How are you? Hey, how are you? Yay! Michael Salamone is on my show. How are you?
I'm quite well. I'm grateful for you having me.
I'm grateful for you being here. David Cobb wants me to ask you, do you think he's crazy?
I saw that. My answer to all his questions was yes. But good kind of crazy, and I agree with you. But I do need to correct him. I'm not going to talk at all about the RNC. There were 2 conventions in Philadelphia I'm going to talk about.
Okay,
One for the floor, one for the corporate media, one for the citizen journalist.
Awesome. So let's talk. Let's talk. That's a great distinction, right? Because we had two conventions that were covered by mainstream media, but like you said, in Philly, we had the inside and the outside. And you, my brother, along with Benjamin Dixon and John and some other folks, were on the outside. You guys were in the thick of it.
Yeah, I would call it definitely the thick of it. Whether it be the street level rallies that we went to in downtown Philly or what we saw on the fence line protests, which I think I speak for John, Ben, and Mike, our whole team, that we took we found love in the fence line protests because those people were there day and night. If people were in the convention center, they were there to greet them. Shame, shame, shame for the Hillary delegates, and applause and thank you for the Bernie delegates, especially when they did their direct actions and walked out.
So let's talk about this piece. I love your writing, right? But you had a great perspective because, obviously as someone who was there actually covering it from a news standpoint, right? But then also, basically there's no way that you guys were just bystanders, covering an event. You guys, in many ways, were participants in democracy, like real democracy happening in action.
Yeah, people would stop us and thank us for live streaming and trying to get what was really happening out. I've covered other conventions in the past, but those were all like, what party are you going to? This DNC was, what protest are you going to? And
oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I feel like our team, Ben Dixon, myself, John McDonald, and Mike James really did a good job at getting to almost all the protests.
Yeah, every time I tried to check into the feed, maybe it was a break. I remember at one point, you guys were running. I know John gave out water. So just tell me like the overall feel, right? Because I know that, we come back now post-convention, we're moving beyond the convention and we have unity, right? Hillary Clinton quelled the insurgency, but from following you guys, I know, and many of our viewers know, there was nothing quelled. If anything, people went home more motivated than ever.
Yeah, elected delegates who were just serving their post didn't finish out the convention because there was no unity. The imagery of unity was brought to you by seat fillers bussed in by the Democratic Party, white noise machines, as verified by one of the Vermont delegates for me. Just shady camera work in general. I don't know how to describe it other than the fact that you have to figure Bernie delegates were 43% of the delegation.
Right.
And a very small percentage, maybe 1 or 2%, bought into unity. The rest were trying to have a floor vote on vice president, hold signs up against the TPP, and really have a discussion about WikiLeaks, which the impression I got from talking to the delegations we were able to speak with, they felt they were just kind of brushed off by Donna Brazile and had no real answer to what they saw in those WikiLeaks emails.
So kind of take me through, like, what was on the outside, right? So majority of the time, for the most part, was on the outside, different protests, just some of the stuff that you guys covered, maybe if there were any high points or just maybe some some feedback or insight into what you experienced, what you witnessed. We watched the stream, but you were actually there interacting with people.
Really, and what I hope to have said about the Tale of Two Cities aspect of things in the piece that dropped today was best of times, worst of times. subversion of democracy, or at least disenfranchisement from the party was happening. But this feeling of elation that so many people took time from their lives to come out and stand for something or against something, however you look at it. But I spoke to so many people that hitchhiked their way there.
Oh, wow.
Camping. They didn't know how they were going to pay their rent because they made this trip. They made personal sacrifice to be there and stand against the coronation of Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. Because of that camaraderie, everybody bonded. And with people like John McDonald making sure everybody stayed hydrated, there's also that sense of community of sharing. But again, the fence line protest is what impressed me the most. People were taking shifts to make sure somebody was there, especially near the train stations at all times. And there was a great feeling of solidarity. And I think if you read, there was a piece in Philly Mag today about what the cops thought of the Bernie supporters, which was very positive. That translated through. The agitators weren't part of the Bernie Sanders, or what I like to call our movement, since Bernie's moved on from it.
Right.
Our people were good. They were maybe a little disorganized. I think Ben Dixon has a lot to say on that. I personally feel like the fact that they showed up and they were able to march is organization enough for what it needed to be. The Black Lives Matter folks were organized to a T, though. I think they've got some more months of experience organizing, though.
Definitely. So because I know there was a lot going on. I mean, there were times where I would look at the schedule, of course, for everybody, you guys tuned in. We did coverage, on the home front, so to speak, dnclive.net. But there was a schedule. There were schedules of protests, going on, and there would be like this speak out over here, but then there's a march taking place and then a rally over here. So it's like so much going on everywhere. Were you able to, so you just mentioned the Black Lives Matter, the Philly Real Justice, were you guys able to catch any of that or get, I know at one point it merged with another rally that was happening or protest, and it became a larger grouping.
The Black Lives Matter march that we made kind of merged with a Green Party march, but it was almost appropriate because Yanni was there and Dr. West was there, and it flowed together well. So we caught that one. There were some rallies, and Black Men for Bernie were throwing a rally every 10 minutes, it felt like, and the first part of theirs and move on to a different one. Those guys are great.
Shout out to Bruce and everybody else with Black Men for Bernie. Awesome.
And some of their rallies were more like dance parties too, which were kind of fun because I think, especially after Bernie sent his delegates over to Hillary, people needed to unwind and boogie down a little bit.
Yeah, I think I might have tuned out that part. but so, okay, we boogie down a little bit. We had the insight. How would you compare basically then, like the continuation of a people's convention, so to speak, on the outside, rain or shine? Because I know you guys got caught in rain at some points as well. Versus from what we've heard about going on the inside. We're now looking at this movement is now looking at an inside versus outside game. There's some people who are staying on the inside and going to try and plug them along regardless of what happened last week. And there's another cadre, a growing cadre, that is really focused on the outside game, whether it's in another party or just being independent and kind of, making it work however possible.
The rain was definitely a factor. That's the one Hillary supporter I made friends with, though, was during the rain. A wonderful woman by the name of Nina, who by chance watches. We love you, Nina. But the thing I guess I'd like to say what the difference of inside and outside is, because the Bernie delegates who were inside came outside. What I tried to say in the piece today is there were two conventions. The Hillary supporter, easily identified in a $3,000 suit. The Bernie supporter, easily identified in a layer of sweat and a T-shirt. And that sort of social comfort, I really felt, was the divide, even if it wasn't talked about. If you were downtown around the convention center, you ran into more Hillary people doing their workshops at the Pennsylvania Convention Center, and they were often bragging about how much they donated to get credentialed and things like that. Around the fence line is where you'd run into Bernie delegates and, of course, the Bernie protesters, and that's where you'd hear stories about I have no idea how I'm going to come back from paying for this trip, but I had to be here. There's an economic rift that we've talked about all year long that was quite apparent in who represents who.
Right.
And I think that's true with the media coverage as well. Our team, John McDonald, would often ask people from major media sources if they felt guilty for the way they were covering the convention.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't, because they were getting their information of 200 to 300 protesters from Magic, because they never went out there. We had some intermediate brethren. We had to really peer pressure to get out there. Everybody was comfy inside Wells Fargo, where you could drive up nice and close. Nobody wanted to do that 2-hour hike out to the protest zone. But once you did that hike,
right,
a whole different world. People were camping in FDR Park. There were definite hippies, like straight up, singing songs and playing bongos kind of hippies, but there were a lot of
drums.
just a lot of concerned citizens. And I think it's fair to say, sure, millennials were a big part of it, but it was across ages, across races. Mm-hmm. The only thing that you could definitely see was there was an income gap between the two sides. And I think that kind of sums up our last year.
And I think that's a really interesting point, that you saw the income gap, particularly when you're looking at the delegates and participants between the two candidates. When you think of this notion that it is privilege that keeps Bernie supporters from getting behind Hillary Clinton, when in fact it's actually the opposite. People say that whether Bernie supporters are not voting or going green or whatever strategy that's being employed, it's because they're privileged somehow. They somehow do not really suffer any hardship, and we see that that's not the case, right? We have so many different examples. I actually have, maybe I'm finally going to write something. I have a friend from grad school who messaged me. He's Mexican American, and he was just irate. He's like, I'm not supporting her, Noah. We have to write something. So we're going to try to write about this idea that privilege, that not supporting her is a privileged position, when in fact it's the opposite, that people are privileged, and that's why they're supporting her, and that's why they're badgering and fear mongering to get people to support her. And I think what you were just saying about how, looking at, because I know several people who were delegates. I know some people were delegates who couldn't afford to go, and alternates went instead. I know people who, really, they could have done things with their kids. There are families who didn't go on summer on vacations because mom or dad, or both mom and dad, or father and daughter were delegates, and this was really important.
So get their medicine because they spent that money on their trip to Philadelphia.
Yeah. See, we need universal health care. We need universal health care so people can afford to participate in democracy. See here? Mm-hmm. But what is your sense, though, going forward, about the energy, about maybe, we see the two, it really is two different worlds, right? Even looking at the way that this has been characterized in the aftermath. And we continue to have the narrative being driven by mainstream media outlets as it is. How from your experience, how do you see, in your experience just in general, but also your experience last week, how do you see this going? Like, where do you see the potential? I know you guys got to meet and talk with Jill Stein as well during one of the several protests you covered. Where do you see this going? Like, where do you see the potential? Like, how do you see this happening going forward?
Ben got to talk to Jill on the protest lines. Thanks to our good friend Tim Black, I was able to meet with her one-on-one. Where is this going? All right, so let's look at the numbers. We know that there are more independent voters, and I apologize, it's getting dark out.
No, you're fine.
There are more independent voters than Democrats or Republicans at this point. So there are statistical models that show that if you could get a Gary Johnson or a Jill Stein to the debate stage, it's possible for them to pull just as big of numbers as the major party candidates if they were to get that sort of attention, especially in a year that the two major party candidates are disliked so much and distrusted so much. So how do we do that? That means people like me who've been critical and skeptical of the Green Party have to shut up and put up and say, I'm with Jill, and I am. I'm going to try to encourage everybody to at least answer a pollster. Yes, I'm voting Green Party if you get asked by a pollster. But if you live, especially as I do, in what they call a safe state, that's going to go to Hillary anyhow, protest vote. Vote green. And if we start to see polls in October before Halloween that Jill Stein could win this thing, go all in, because it's better to dream than to be pragmatic. Pragmatics are always taking idealism away from us. We don't get anything done for our ideals because we're always being pragmatic. Look for the excuse to be an idealist, and we might just have it this time around. Odds are against it. So let's get her to the debate stage at least, because the progressive ideals that we've been fighting for this past year are best championed by Jill Stein, not Hillary Clinton. Even a Clinton supporter has to agree with us there that it's a different platform than what the Bernie people were fighting for. Jill's pretty close to it. So let's keep fighting, because this is just 1 year. And as Noah and I have talked at least endlessly offline about, what really counts is the down ballot stuff if we're going to get change. Yes, the presidential ticket matters, but for real change, and as David, your guest prior, spoke to, we've got to start tackling the campaign finance and the local offices. This has got to be a priority. I don't care if you go in and skip the presidential ballot, vote down and vote progressive. That's good enough for me. But we keep organizing. Kashama Sawant and Socialist Alternative did great trainings on the ground in Philadelphia.
That's what I heard.
Around their vision for a party of the 99%, a coalition party.
Okay.
I think that along with your friends at Brand New Congress, all these different things working in synergy, something magic could happen. But what does that take? That means all of us just still staying alert, not giving up. That's so important. Don't give up. Remember my catchphrase. I don't know if you can see because it's dark. Your TV lies to you.
Your TV lies to you. Yes. I love it. Someone earlier said you need to add New York Times and Washington Post, and the list goes on. That is great.
But, be the media, run for all these things that we've talked about all year are still true. Nothing changed because Bernie went the other direction.
Absolutely.
That's all I've done.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, and he went back to being independent. So, I really think that's a signal I think he gave us a signal. Anyway, thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you for joining me. And of course, as always, you are always welcome to come and chat with me anytime. I owe you so much. You and Ben and David Grossman and the rest of the team here at Progressive Army.